Hi, this is my video presentation for trig equations, so let's go get started. Okay, so this first problem is going to be one where we will use an identity to solve for all the possible solutions between 0 and 2 pi. So this first problem is sine squared x plus 2 minus cosine squared x equals 3 sine x. So you can go ahead and see that you can change this cosine squared x to a 1 minus sine squared x, which will get everything to be sine. So I'm just going to go ahead and write that down. And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and distribute this negative up. So that will give you a -1 and a positive sine squared x. And go ahead and move the 3 sine x to the same side and make that all equal 0. So then I'm just going to combine like terms to give a 2 sine squared x minus 3 sine x plus 1. And then, so this is going to be the part where I have to go ahead and factor this out. It's easier, in my opinion, to see if I change the sine x to a variable, so I'm just going to use y, and I'll put this in a separate color because this will not be the final answer. So here you would have 2y squared. So basically what I'm just doing is rewriting this in terms of the variable, minus 3y plus 1. Factor that as normal. So you want to have two numbers that multiply to 2 and add up to -3. So that would be -2 and -1. So then you would end up with a 2y squared minus 2y minus y plus 1. Then you would just use the grouping method to get 2y, y minus 1, minus 1, parentheses, y minus 1. So you just want to go ahead and combine those two to get you 2y minus 1 and y minus 1. Then I'm going to go ahead and change that y back to the sine x. So then you're going to get 2 sine x, we'll put that in parentheses, minus 1, sine x minus 1. You can set those both equal to 0 to get you 2 sine x equals 1 and sine x equals 1. This, go ahead and divide the 2 sine x by 2, do it to the other side as well, so you get sine x equals 1/2. And now this is where you're going to look at your unit circle and see where sine of x equals 1/2 and where it equals 1. So sine equals 1/2 at pi over 6 and at 5 pi over 6. So I'm just going to go ahead and write that down here. And sine equals 1 only at pi over 2. So since we're only finding the answers between 0 and 2 pi, these are your final answers: pi over 6, 5 pi over 6, and pi over 2. So the second problem I'm going to do is a multiple angle identities, which is going to be secant squared 4x equals 2. And this is also going to be between 0 and 2 pi. Oh, and before I forget, the word of the day is Grover, as in Sesame Street or Percy Jackson, whichever. Anyway, so for this one, there is a change in period. So I'm going to go ahead and find out what the period is, which you would do period equals 2 pi divided by 4, which is just pi over 2. So here you have a period of pi over 2. So back to the problem. First thing I'm going to do is take a square root of both sides, which is going to give secant 4x equals plus or minus the square root of 2. It's easier if you change secant to cosine, since those two go together, and that would give you cosine 4x, and then the reciprocal of this, of the plus or minus square root of 2, which is plus or minus 1 over the square root of 2. If you rationalize, multiply both by the square root of 2, you will get the square root of 2 over 2, and that's still plus or minus. So then you can set 4x equal to the square root of 2 over 2, positive and negative, and see where it equals that on your unit circle. So there's going to be 4 places, considering you have both positive and negative square root of 2 over 2, and that's going to be all the pi over 4s, all the over 4s. So you have 4x equals pi over 4, 4x equals 3 pi over 4, 4x equals 5 pi over 4, and 4x 7 pi over 4. Now you have to multiply the amount of answers you get here, which, considering it was a square root and you have plus or minus, you have 4 total answers here, but since there was a change in period and we're finding between 0 and 2 pi, you're going to have to multiply this by this value here. So 4 times 4 is 16, going to have 16 total answers. So first things first, before we can add our period to get the rest of our answers, to divide this by 4 or multiply it by 1/2. I'm going to change colors again so you can kind of see that. Is going to give, pi over 16, 3 pi over 16, 5 pi over 16, and 7 pi over 16. So now, go ahead and add the period. You have to make sure there is a common denominator. So if this is pi over 2, you have to add an 8 pi over 16. And you're just going to continue doing that until you have all 16 answers. So I'm just going to write it down here. So that's going to give an answer of 9 pi over 16, because 1 plus 8 is 9. 11 pi over 16. 13 pi over 16. 15 pi over 16. And then I'm just going to keep adding 8 pi over 16 until I get all 16 answers. So then you're going to, 9 plus 8 is 17. 11 plus 8 is 19. 13 plus 8 is 21. 15 plus 8 is 23. And then one more time will give us all our answers. 17 plus 8 is 25. 19 plus 8 is 27. 21 plus 8 is 29. 23 plus 8 is 31. So there you have all 16 answers. This is not part of your answers. You have all of these here. So that is that problem. For the last one, I'm going to do 4 sine squared 12x minus 3 equals 0. And this one is going to be all possible solutions in degrees, so not just between 0 and 360. So same thing, we have another period change. I'm going to go ahead and find the period. Since we're in degrees, I'm going to do 360 divided by 12, which gives us a period of 30 degrees. So first things first, I'm going to move the 3 to the other side. Gives 4 sine squared 12x equals 3. You have to divide by 4 first before you take a square root. So divide both sides by 4. Gives sine squared 12x equals 3/4. Now take a square root of both sides, which is going to give sine 12x equals plus or minus square root of 3/4. So you have to rationalize here as well. Well, yeah, which is going to give an answer of plus or minus the square root of 3/2. So now you can go ahead and set up 12x to where on the unit circle sine is equal to the square root of 3/2. So same thing, we're going to have another 4 answers here because of the square root. So this is going to be at 60 degrees, 120 degrees, 240 degrees, and 300 degrees. Those are all the places where it equals plus or minus square root of 3/2. So 12x equals 60, 120, 240, and 300. Now we have to divide these by 12 because of this here to make sure it equals x. So divide by 12, divide by 12. And that's going to give 5 degrees, 10 degrees, 20 degrees, and 25 degrees. Since these are all possible solutions, you don't just have to find the ones between 0 and 360, so you have to find a way to write these to include all possible answers. This is actually pretty easy. You're just going to do the period times n. So since we already calculated our period to be at 30 degrees, you just have to stick that on the end here. So 30n plus 30n plus 30n and plus 30n. And that is going to be your final answer, these here.